Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to our first installment of UFC Roundup 2022. Michael, we're back, man. How was your vacation?
Oh, man, it was good. It's really good. I spent the holiday in Whitefish, Montana with my family. It's the first time getting, first time I got to spend the holiday with both my sisters and all the kids.
Oh, nice.
Quite some time. So it's really nice. Did some snowboarding, did some drinking. It was a good time. It was a good time. Drank a lot of Baileys in my coffee in the mornings. I really spoiled myself. It was my first Christmas without a fight looming over my head in 4 years. So I really took advantage. How was your holiday season, Paul?
It was great, man. Great Christmas with the family. Everybody kind of gets together at my mom's for Christmas Eve. Got to see everybody. Yeah, things went really well. Was out in California recently doing some stuff for maybe Hacks season 2. I don't know. I can't get into too many details, but it was a good time. But we're back. We got a lot to unpack here on this show. 270 coming up this weekend, and we even have a special guest. So without further ado, I want to get him right in here. John, my man, Gooden. John Gooden, welcome to the show. I can't believe I'm used to you hosting me on a show. Welcome, my friend. It is a pleasure to have you, buddy. How you doing?
Thank you. Doing well. I can just sit back now, right? You're leading the dance.
Yeah.
Ask me some questions. Yeah, how the tables have turned in 2022.
They have turned in 2022. And you know what? There's so much to talk about. We were even having trouble wrangling us together, the three of us, when we were prepping for this show. So let's get right into it. UFC 270. We got two big old heavyweights who you've had the chance to spend a lot of time with in their gyms, more importantly with their coach, who has coached both of these men. So I'm sure you've got some interesting tidbits that you can inform us and the audience at home about these two guys, John.
Yeah, well, I guess let's start with Francis, right? We all now, I think, are across his story coming from Africa all the way eventually into Paris, France. And you're right, I've been out there to the gym. I've been in the soup kitchen that Francis used to serve at. And then how that transition a couple of doors down into martial arts came good for him under Fernand Lopez, this coach who within 3 years got him a title shot, which is just unprecedented, really. 3 years, that's crazy. Most people are still indulging in an amateur career in that time, but Francis, with his athleticism, of course, heavyweights kind of have their ascendancy is a little bit different, I think, in the sport of mixed martial arts. But then he repeated the pattern again with Cyril Gane, and there was a little crossover. So for one of the training camps, I wasn't there to see. I wish I was there to see. That footage on my mobile device would be worth something. In a little sparring between those two. But I do know that they got big guys in that gym and they do go hard. It's a small space in Paris, and like in the UK, the gyms aren't like these behemoths at ATT. We've got small little places like my office here where you got big dudes bouncing off the walls and jamming elbows into each other, which we've seen a little bit of. And with this, there's been a little bit of discontent around the camps. Of course, Francis went to Vegas. He left Fernand. He then came back to Fernand, and that's when I caught up with him in France. And he explained to me his story and how he had this fast rise and didn't really have the infrastructure around him, both professionally and socially, to really understand pro fighting, being a guy in the public eye, after having been like hiding in a forest away from the authorities for the last 5 years. It was a very, very different time for him. But with the aid of the guys in Vegas and Fernand, he was starting to get everything together. But then he left them again and he went back stateside. And I've always thought that was kind of odd. And eventually Fernand started opening up about this and talking about Francis's ego and maybe how he wasn't the best teammate. But on the other side, he had this new guy, this new project, Cyril Gane, who maybe doesn't come with the raw horsepower that Francis did, but clearly Fernand understands what it takes to get those big guys to the very top. And here we are again. But they're very different characters. And Cyril, you've been around him, Paul. He's a very, very likable character. I've enjoyed my time with him. He's a big friendly giant. And he doesn't have that kind of aggressive nature about him. And it's a very different style, which also I think is a credit to Fernand Lopez, that he's able to not necessarily make a fighter with a certain mold, but harness individual attributes. And now we have this situation where his two students, and one a former student, are going up against one another. The beef isn't between the fighters necessarily, but I can't help but feel Francis wants to get one over his old coach and Jim. Cyril obviously wants to unify the title for himself, but also maybe, as we're all martial artists and our coaches are like our tribal leaders, we kind of want to do it for the honor of our professor, our sensei, our crew, whoever it might be. They're playing that down a little bit, but simmering underneath, I think that's what's at play here.
Man, the soothing tones of John Gooden. It's been too long. I was just hypnotized by your storytelling. I'm like, gosh, I could listen to John all day. But look, John, I got to ask you, everybody's making a really big deal about the sparring footage, and you've got to be in the gym with both of these guys. Do you feel like it's been kind of a one-sided, just one guy's kind of swinging the hammer the whole time, or do you think that there's been instances where maybe Cyril's gotten the better of Francis and then vice versa, Francis has gotten the better of him? Because when I'm watching the Countdown show, Francis is very adamant, like, hey, there's other footage out there that they're not showing where I'm kind of putting it on this guy too. Did you get the vibe that they're pretty evenly matched from the time that you've seen them train?
Yeah, and you guys can talk about this more than what I can, but there's a difference when you've got a guy who's casually coming into the gym and helping out to a guy that's in camp. Someone who, and then at the same time, you know, Francis and Cyril, what we might have seen, that might have been at the end of the day, Francis might have had a bunch of hard rounds or had a hard week. Cyril's fresher because he hasn't got a fight coming up. And it doesn't look good for Francis on what we've seen. There's some other stuff peddling along here as well, because I think Francis and his team in Vegas are a little upset that surface because it's kind of breaking some rules. But coming back from Europe, Fernand has then alluded to some of the footage that some of his other guys that have sparred maybe with Francis in the past, that has surfaced, and those guys didn't have a problem with that coming out. So there's a bit of tit for tat going on. But to directly answer your question, you know how it is. Guys have good and bad days. I'm sure there was a share of it. Cyril was also a lot younger in the sport at the time. So I would imagine that he did feel the full force of Francis Ngannou at more than a few occasions, I would say.
Well, I'm sure Paul can attest to this. I'm not a fan of the sparring footage being released and, you know, in the coach coming out on the Countdown show saying, look, whenever Cyril wanted to touch him, he touched him. I just think there is, like you said, there's unspoken rules in this sport. And that really violates one of the most important ones, which is what happens in the gym stays at the gym. And that's something that we're big on in our camp. So seeing that come out and having that kind of be a storyline leading up into this fight, I can see where there is some extra fuel thrown on the fire for Francis Ngannou. I mean, it's got to be frustrating when you're the heavyweight champ and your former coach is releasing footage of violating rules that us as competitors kind of, like I said, they're unspoken rules, and it's definitely in violation of those, so to say.
Yeah, it's that was never a thing that I wanted to do, right? I didn't even like having my sparring taped at all, right? It's like you talked about, John. You don't know if he had a big lift session that morning, if he had already grappled 10 rounds, or if that was part of a Shark Tank. I'm not saying any of it was. It could have just been Cyril's day. Cyril's obviously the more technical striker. We've seen it in his fights. We've seen it in the octagon. Francis has that touch of God in his hands, right? That's his gift. And you can't really translate that into 18-ounce gloves and sparring and fatigue, all those issues. But both of these guys, since that footage, have really developed. I know for a fact, I've talked a lot to Eric Nixick, who's a good friend of mine who I've worked with, and I know how dedicated Francis is to becoming more well-rounded down there, or over there, I should say, at Extreme Couture. And we've seen Cyril Gane heel hooks, grappling. He was so young in the sport, and if he was young there in that clip, imagine how much more developed he is. So I think we're going to see a much more fine-combed fight than what we saw of those guys kind of slugging it out in the gym. And that's, listen, I think with MMA, what ends up happening is it's such, a close-knit group of people that have to train together, and how we have to get ready for fights, that you become a family. You really do. Michael, John, you know this. People get really connected and really love each other. So when somebody leaves or somebody gets hurt, even if it's just business, it ends up translating into a bit of a personal beef. And that's what we're seeing right now between the coach. You can see that there's some hurt there that's now translating into anger and wanting a bit of revenge. But I'm hoping at the end of the day, they can kind of squash that and move forward, because at the end of the day, it's about Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou, and it shouldn't be about any relationships between coaches and things like that. But that is definitely the underlying tension between these two.
I do feel like it's all directed at the coach for sure. I mean, it's more, everything goes through the coach. It's not like Cyril and Francis really saying stuff about each other. It's more Francis, his animosity is kind of directed towards his former coach. But I think that the question that the big question surrounding this fight doesn't even involve these two fighters. I got to ask you, John, do you see John Jones fighting for the heavyweight title in 2022? I mean, that's been a big storyline surrounding this fight. It doesn't even involve the guys in the main event. It's all about, hey, is whoever wins this fight, are they fighting John Jones next? So I got to ask you, John, do you see that happening this year? And I'd like to know what your take is. How does each guy match up against the GOAT, John Jones?
Right. I've got to say this just because I feel, being in Europe and I have a relationship with Fernand. If I don't say this, I've missed. I'm not being fully honest. Now, Fernand has said to Cyril, do not let this affect the fight. Whatever may have gone on is between Francis and I hope that we can resolve our differences. So I just wanted to put that out there. Fernand he's not adding fuel. He's trying to say, ignore this, Cyril. This is my beef, not yours. Please don't get involved. And we're going to sort this out regardless. So I just wanted to get that out there. In terms of John Jones coming back, I'm really confused by this, because the last time John Jones made headlines, it was for very negative reasons. And, it's difficult from a martial arts perspective, purely remove everything else, which we kind of can't do. But let's do that for a second. I'm in awe of the guy. I really am. And I cannot wait to see what he brings. I feel like John Jones has a style which suits any of those heavier weight classes, from middleweight all the way up to heavyweights, and the experience that he brings, the aura that he brings, it adds so much to the fight that is in his favor. And the guys that he would be facing, either one of them, they don't touch the level of experience that he has. Don't even come close. I mean, they've been through, certainly Francis has been through a lot of stuff in his life and has prevailed. John as well, but his stuff has really been focused around elite professional fighting and celebrity. So I think I give him the edge in the build-up. I really do. In terms of the fight itself, he's always going to be competitive, no doubt. And I just find it difficult to see John Jones losing. I think that both of them can do it because of the power, and then Cyril just being very, very smart. But if it was a game of smarts, honestly, not many have a better IQ in there than John Jones. It would be really difficult. But I just don't know whether that fight's going to come together because of everything going on the periphery. But for martial arts' sake, I would love to see it.
Yeah, I agree with you there, John. That's one of those fights. I mean, we've been asked, and DC's talked about, everybody's talking about it. It's not even when, it's a matter of if this is even going to be an issue. We've been talking about this heavyweight debut for a really long time. And at this point, as much as we all like to see it, I'm starting to have my doubts. But we got another big fight that we got to talk about. Obviously, the third match between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figuereto. We had a draw in the first one. Second one was awesome while it lasted, but then Moreno just showed that durability, showed that grit, looked really good, the movement on his feet was fantastic, his boxing, and then was able to get him down, out grapple him, and get the finish. So what are your thoughts? Michael, we'll start with you on this third match between these two. We got a draw and a win for Moreno, who's the first Mexican-born champion. Hasn't really even had time to go and let that sink in and celebrate it. You can see he's become kind of a superstar overnight, but now he's got to go right back into that octagon against still one of the scariest flyweights in the world in Figuereto.
Oh, Figuereto is definitely one of the scariest flyweights in the world. I mean, you got Brandon Moreno, who's the champion, and he's just always smiling. He's just got this aura of happiness about him, but he's violent when he gets in the octagon. And it's not even his boxing's on point. His grappling is great, but it's the wrestling. It's the transitions in between the striking and the grappling that he does very well. And I know he spent time training with Daryl Christian in the past, and Daryl Christian's been, he's a staple to TJ Dillashaw's camps, a lot of guys that are clinch heavy when it comes to the wrestling and mixed martial arts. But the big storyline for me when it comes to this third fight between Figuereto and Moreno that I'm really interested in is him being down at Fight Ready, training with Henry Cejudo. I mean, look, if you look past the cringe in Henry Cejudo and you look at the accolades, the guy is one of the most accomplished mixed martial artists we've ever seen, one of the most accomplished combat sport athletes of all time. I mean, the guy's an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. You know, he won the flyweight belt and the bantamweight belt in the UFC. So there's a wealth of knowledge down at that camp. In Figuereto said it himself, headed into the second fight. You know, he opened a gym in Brazil, and he was kind of like, you know, doing construction on the gym on top of training, and just kind of he had too many irons in the fire headed into that rematch. And that's not what you want to do when you're getting into any fight in general. You want to clear the path to just focus on training and focus on your opponent. So, you know, Moreno's doing everything right. He's doing everything that he did before that led to him getting the title. But I'm really interested to see what version of Davison Figuereto we're going to see with him being down in Arizona, down at Fight Ready with the coaches Eddie Cha, Henry Cejudo, the wealth of flyweight training partners that are down there. I'm really interested to see how much of an impact that this has on the fight. And I do believe that it will have an impact on the fight.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's definitely a little person gym to really be pushing it. And the pace down there, I'm sure, is fantastic. And Figueredo, just in what we've seen of him so far leading up to this fight, looks shredded. Looks like he's in shape. And John, we know that that's been an issue in the past. And it's stopped him from fighting for the belt before. Even though the fight went on, he wasn't able to win the belt. And we've seen him struggle before. So with that weight maybe a little more in check, what are your thoughts? Do you think he comes in much fresher? Do you think if it goes to 5 rounds, he's going to be able to push the kind of power and pace that he normally does? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm very interested in all the points that Chiesa was talking about. The difference between Brazil, mixed martial arts, and what you guys have in the States, the science that's available, the resources, weight management, nutrition, all of those things, not having to travel, being outside of the pandemic really now. It's not taken as much of a stronghold. I would imagine things were very challenging in Brazil for a lot of those reasons. The one thing that I'm interested to see, and I just don't know with Figueredo, is his energy management, because he revs up real quick and he throws hard, and that's what we love him for. But when you've got some durable Mexican and time over time, like for centuries, the Mexicans have just been so tough and been able to keep that motor running. He just hasn't shown that he can really find his range across those rounds. The example that's coming in my head is Peter Yan against Corey Sandhagen, like being able to figure it out in the fight when things weren't going well, and then just completely changing the way that he was approaching the fight to go out there, put in a champion's performance, if you like, and come away victorious. Figueredo's just so raw and emotional that I just don't know if he's got that. And would have been a wake-up call for him. Now he's got to gel with a new corner, new voices, trust in them. I think he's a guy who's, you know, there's a bit about him. There's a bit of ego that drives him, and not necessarily a bad thing for his fight style. So, yeah, I'm interested to see whether all of these things end up being a positive or actually frustrate him a little bit.
Yeah, and, you know, just touching on that one last note with Fight Ready, and this is kind of abstract from the fight itself, but I'm really interested to see the results of Davison Figueiredo's fight, because we've seen, going back to John Jones was down there spending time at Fight Ready. And we're going to see Yuri Prohaska is apparently going to go down there. So I'm really interested to see Davison Figueiredo is going to be the first guy that's going to have spent time with Henry Cejudo and get out there and compete. And so I'm interested to see how is Henry's team and how is Henry as a coach going to impact these guys that are pulling up shop and moving down to Arizona and training with him.
Yeah, we'll see. And also Zhang Wei Li, right, had spent some time down at Fight Ready in Cejudo's camp, and she showed some new wrinkles to her game in that fight. Didn't go her way, didn't get the decision, but still showed some new wrestling skills and things like that, and going for the takedowns a lot more. And speaking of takedowns, Kamaru Usman, champion, next in line. Dana White says 100%. Birmingham's own Leon Edwards. John, a long time coming for this guy. Somebody that I've had the pleasure of calling fights with you, just the skill set, the personality, the guy's got it all. And finally, it looks like Leon is going to get that shot. I imagine you've spent a lot of time with Leon, and you've got to be happy for this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I visited Leon a bunch for fights that, especially recently, for fights that never actually came through, like a Hamzat fight, for example. So I've seen Leon in camp. I've had the pleasure of actually being on the mat with him as well. I took a teammate up and we all joined in a wrestling, and then they did the MMA thing. I backed out of that. But Leon is a very special character, and he's very important for UK MMA, especially mixed martial arts in Birmingham. He wants to prove that you can stay here in the UK and become a champion. All the guys in the UK are looking up to him. Arnold Allen is back on these shores. He's up in Birmingham training at Team Renegade with Tom Breeze, Leon, and all the other guys they got up there. It's becoming a real hub. But he's had to wait an awful long time. He's put in win after win. He's very business-minded, so he knew that he should cling on to that win streak. He's not someone that's going to go out there and sell a fight in a contrived way. It's been interesting listening to him away from the cameras, seeing the frustration, but at the same time staying true to the path. It's finally come up for him. I'm really pleased to see that, because I think at moments there he was really doubting whether it was going to happen for him, whether he was pursuing the right strategy all of this time, and who he would need to fight. Like, no one wants to take Hamzat like last year with the guys just coming through. He hadn't had that performance against Li Jingliang. It's just, what are you going to gain from it, really? But he was kind of willing to do it in the end. So, yeah, I'm happy. We need to see the rematch. It was a negative performance from Leon first time around. They're very different fighters, and he's great in the gym. Leon is phenomenal in the gym. And I'm very, very interested to see how he matches up with Kamaru Usman, who looks to be getting better. And that's what's scary.
Yeah, and Leon, a lot of people will give Leon flack for inactivity, but there were so many things that were out of his control. I mean, he's matched up against Tyron Woodley, and then the pandemic hits, and he's locked down in this country, and it was kind of the same thing for a lot of people as we went through this whole coronavirus pandemic. So there was things, when people want to give him flack for being inactive, there were so many things that were out of his control. And like you said, his willingness to step in there and fight Khamzat Chimaev after he's put together this awesome win streak, it shows that it's not that he's choosing to be inactive. He was willing to take chances against guys that weren't even ranked yet. So I think Leon's very deserving of it. I mean, undefeated in 10 fights, 9-0 with 9-0 with one no contest. That alone, that's very deserving of a title fight. And when you're Kamaru Usman, he talks about how he's kind of lapping the division. Well, that fight was a long time ago, and Leon Edwards has put together 10 fights, and he's gone unbeaten. So yeah, well, you may feel like you're lapping the division. This guy's a different fighter than he was the first time he fought Kamaru. So I'm excited to see Leon fight for the title. I love seeing the UK booming back in with guys like Leon Edwards and Tom Aspinall, and just there's a wealth of talent. Arnold Allen, like you had mentioned, UK MMA is back on the map for sure. So I'm very excited to see how this fight with Kamaru and Leon transpires, because Leon presents a lot of different weapons than the guys that Kamaru's fought in his recent fights.
Yeah, and for Kamaru, that just proves your greatness as the welterweight champ. I mean, if you're starting to lap guys and having to go and rematch guys that you beat 9-10 fights ago, it just speaks to the level of where you're at. And even for Leon, let's say, God forbid, the fight happens, it doesn't go his way. At least it's out of right. Check that box. I fought for the belt. I know, okay, I'm not quite there yet. It opens up the rest of the division. Whereas right now, it's like he's kind of fought and beaten everybody he's supposed to beat. He's got to fight for the belt. It's just really log jams things up if he doesn't get that belt. So to see that happening, to see Dana 100% guaranteeing that, that's what I like to see. I like to see these divisions moving, next contenders fighting the champions, people that are deserving and in the right placement in the rankings fighting the champions. And that's exactly what's happening. You got the number 3 guy facing the champion. He's been on an insane win streak since losing to him before he was champ. The storyline adds up, and I like the fight, and I like to see a Leon Edwards fight. So let's get it happening.
And just
I like it.
I was going to say a final point. I don't want to get violins out for Leon, but you got to feel sympathy. And I'm just trying to get everyone to imagine what it was like when that was finally offered. After all of the problems around the last couple of years, and then the fight with Bilal Muhammad, and like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And then he walks out of there. We saw the behind the scenes footage, which I don't think Leon and his team were very happy about, where he's on the phone to his mother and he's clearly brokenhearted. Then he comes out that, you have the Diaz fight as well, and he wins all but 30 seconds of it. And because it's Diaz and he worked the mic so well and maybe doesn't even need to talk, everything that he'd built was just wrecked in those last few seconds, even though he showed a seasoned performance in order to stay on his feet, etc. It was just, it dusted all the good work. And then, it goes on from there and you're like, this is not going to happen for this guy. This guy is, whatever he has done, he's been cursed. So finally to see that he's getting that contract across the desk, he must have been overjoyed from what he's been through over the last few years. Just wanted to put that out there because it builds up a picture of what he's going to bring on that performance and how much he wants it and what he's had to go through to get there.
Well, he's very deserving of it. And the one thing I like about it is it puts some clarity in the welterweight division because we got this awkward log jammer. We don't know, you got Vicente Luque at number 5. He's not going to fight Burns, his teammate. What's Leon doing? So it's nice that they've confirmed that they're going to do Usman versus Leon Edwards. So now it's going to put some clarity in how they're going to match guys up. And, talking about the welterweight division, John, you were on a nice little European holiday. And you spent some time with Khamzat Chimaev. So I got to ask you, do you have any intel about a potential matchup? We saw Bilal Muhammad's cryptic tweet. I know you were on the match training with him. Just tell us about your experience of, being around Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, so I've seen him a couple of times now. Well, more than a couple of times. When I used to go and film with Alex Gustafsson and Jimmy Manua, he was the guy on the mat. And there's a certain energy about people in the room. You guys will know what I mean. You're drawn to them. You can't help but look at them. Management and coaches are saying, okay, I know you're here to see Alex and stuff, but while Alex is just getting a bit of water, can I just drag your eyes over to that mother lover over there who's picking up some big top European heavyweight and putting them on their back, or like a middleweight UFC vet who didn't appreciate the level of sparring he was getting out of Khamzat. They're training room secrets that I'm obviously divulging, but no more will be said. And he just looked different to a lot of the other people. So I knew when he was on the come up that he was going to be special. Seeing him now achieve all of that, he's staying quite humble. He's in the gym still as the same. He was there, the first of the pro guys on the mat, putting work in with Andreas Michael on the pads. I jumped in on the grappling session and got murdered by everyone. And Khamzat was it was just an awful experience. He was shit talking me whilst we were grappling. I didn't have any, listen, I knew I was never going to offer him anything, but at the same time, I've been in with some good guys before and it was just horrid. He was playing with me. He's super strong. You'll like this, guys. He says, should we start standing up? And I'm like, hell no. No. We start knees, please. Give me at least an ounce of a chance. And I had nothing there. But I've got a film coming out on UFC Fight Pass from that visit. He was just talking to him. He thinks differently. Like he's one mode, one gear. He's not afraid. He's excited, like weirdly excited and comfortable with the violence. There's no nerves at all. They literally have to calm him down at all times, which is different when you hear guys like Darren Till, for example, talking about their fear before walking out. Like, I genuinely don't think Khamzat is covering up anything. I think he's bouncing off the wall legitimately because he thinks that his training room is worse than what he's going to get in the octagon at this stage. But I will say, Chiesa, before he walked into his last fight, they were eyeing you as a potential way, maybe Neil Magny and you, in order to get further towards the top. I don't know if that's still within the ambitions. Gilbert Burns, whilst I was there, they were going in each other's DMs, and it was out there. I'm not disclosing any secrets here, that they were making a fight themselves. I don't know what the UFC's response was to that, but that was a fight that they were very interested in. Khamzat was good to go. He had 2 months before he had a 2-month camp before his last fight. He'd just come off the back of surgeries and complications due to COVID. He wasn't in great condition, but still put in that ridiculous viral performance. And he wanted a quick turnaround. He doesn't understand why that wasn't given to him. But, the UFC have a lot more things to consider than just his career. But now I think if he gets a big performance, he wants a title shot like now. He wants it now. Give him everyone, he said, on the same night. And I think he means it. The guy's he's a little bit crazy, and we love him for it.
Well, I'm not going to lie, John. Me and Hamza did have a little bit of a moment, if you can see.
Hello.
A moment on Fight Island.
Is that the battle?
We took it upon ourselves.
Yeah, it is a
battle.
battle.
Took it upon ourselves. DC matched us up. Like, why don't you guys face off? And we faced off with DC, of course. He's always just out there trying to just cause a ruckus. But yeah, if down the line, I welcome that matchup. He's a heck of an athlete, and it's great seeing his rise in the UFC. I mean, some new blood in the welterweight division is always good.
Yeah, it's he's definitely a monster.
He's nice, though. He's super nice. He's, hey, brother. He's always nice. You see him. He's cordial. He's a good guy.
I think of I'm walking down the hallway when we were first on Fight Island, and he was making his debut, and John Anik pops out of his room, and I'm like, how do you say that guy's name? I certainly know how to say his name now, right? I mean, Khamzat Chimaev. We have been saying that name for a long time. And speaking of talking about prospects, John, we got to talk about Tom Aspinall. I know you've spent a lot of time with that gym as well. This heavyweight, you were speaking his praises when he made his debut, and he lived up to that and then some. Now, obviously, he's going to be really watching this heavyweight championship bout between these two guys coming up this weekend. What are your thoughts on Tom? How soon do you think he could get a title shot? Do you know any rumors? Does he have a fight booked? You don't have to go into any details and talk about who, if you know that, but is he in training camp? What's the situation with Tom Aspinall right now?
I went to see him again. It's for my Fight Pass thing. So I'll be having another film coming out with Tom. So I did that just before Christmas. And I think they didn't have anyone concrete at that point, but Tom was getting geared up because obviously we have this March 19th date looming. Typically that's the UFC London date around that time. St. Patrick's Day weekend, all that jazz. We're all hoping for it. And of course, if you're a UK fighter, European fighter, you want on that card. It's a staple in the calendar. So I think Tom was looking to get geared up for that. I've been talking to him since, and it seems like he's got some news to share with us soon. So I'm excited to hear what that is. But the interesting thing about all of this is now I actually have a really good relationship with his dad, who doesn't get the plaudits that Colin Heron does. Colin's obviously taken a number of fighters to the UFC now, but Tom Aspinall is really coached mainly by his dad. His dad works with him daily. They live very close to one another. They're an hour away from Team Cowbon. And his dad is the guy that sort of guides his career. It's his son. And he's got two boys. His other son's a brilliant jiu-jitsu player as well, but just doesn't have the drive to be an MMA fighter or a prize fighter. But they've considered boxing over the years. They have a strong relationship with Tyson Fury. Peter Fury was in Tom's corner when he had a couple of pro boxing matches. He's done everything in the individual disciplines. Like he was wrecking everyone in the wrestling room when he was a kid. Jiu-jitsu, he won the British Open in jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt. He's done it all. And he's got all the pieces and he's putting it together. His dad, however, wants him to take his time because Tom seemed to be finishing all of his fights a bit too quick. And he's actually, this is very interesting, by the way. His dad has a spreadsheet, and I've seen it, with every single one of Tom's fights, every single one of Tom's interviews, a link to those interviews, generally what he said, and he's just all these details. He's like an IT software engineer, and he's taken this to a whole crazy level. And he's like charted everything about Tom's career. And he gave me the exact number of minutes, I can't recall what it is, that Tom's actually had, not just in the UFC, but professional mixed martial arts. And it's not a lot. It's not a lot. And he said, we're going up against really big names now. He said he's not had a lot of experience. And also, because the UK is a bit light with heavyweights, how do you train a Francis Ngannou fight? A Derek Lewis? They don't know what a heavy right hand off of either of those guys feels like, but you need to taste it a little bit. And there's a lot of things that I think his dad is not unhappy with, but would like Tom to experience before he enters into those big fights. But on the other side, as a fan, and I know how the UFC work, will stop Tom finishing people in dramatic fashion, and they won't give you big opportunities. But if you go out there and put on like one of the most efficient submissions that I've ever seen against Andrei Arlovski, then you're going to get big fights. And I don't think they're going to be able to turn it down. So I'm expecting some pretty significant news coming out of that camp very soon.
Such a problem to have. It's the same problem I had, Michael, throughout my career, was that I just couldn't get enough time in that octagon, just dusting everybody too fast. Hey, that's a good problem to have, right? I mean, that's a good thing. That also means that Tom hasn't taken a ton of damage, that he's still fresh, he's still young. Yeah, really impressed. And I've talked to some other coaches that have heavyweights on the roster, and I won't mention who, but they're concerned about that guy. I can tell you that there are people watching Tom Aspinall and know that he is a problem in the heavyweight division. 100%.
And just as a side note, he's the guy next door. Truly.
Yeah.
When I've talked to him about fights or whatever, he's as interested in my opinion as like a fight fan.
Yeah.
He's got no sense of grandeur or elitism. He's just like your family guy. He's got a few kids, beautiful wife, lives close to his dad as well. They got this. It's very wholesome, but also quite ridiculous that I think, within a very short amount of time, this guy could be ascending the ranks and potentially looking at UFC gold this year, early next year.
Yeah.
I got the vibe from him as well on Fight Island during the fighter interviews. He's just very humble. He's very grounded, just very nonchalant about how good of a fighter he is. And I think that that's a good recipe for greatness. Is some of the best fighters that we've ever seen in the sport are always the ones that are the most humble and the most hungry. So it's a breath of fresh air being around Tom Aspinall. And you know what, John? I'll be there March 19th. I'll be working the desk. So
yes.
So hopefully hopefully we won't be doing this from Vegas. So I'm just got my fingers crossed that I can cross paths with you again and give me a little tour of your backyard.
Love it.
But John, before we let you go, 2022 New Year's resolution. What do you got this year?
I'm going to add another couple of million to my NFT collection, create my own little neighborhood in the metaverse. And that's about it, really. Everything else.
God. I just saw on the news that was it Snoop Dogg or somebody's got in the metaverse or whatever a $400,000 house.
It's crazy, right?
I can't wrap my head around it, guys. We'll talk about it in London.
You need to start.
I know, because it's where it's going. Investment into that. I agree. It's where to go and it's where to invest. But that doesn't mean I understand it yet.
Yeah.
John,
2025 we'll be doing roundup in the metaverse. So you can
exactly. Our avatar
to our live production of UFC roundup in the metaverse.
From here in the metaverse to the UK metaverse. John, thanks for being on, man. And hopefully everything works out and we will be seeing you soon and we'll see you in March. But we got to get you back on again, man. This is great. And vice versa. Anytime you need us, we're there for you on your shows too, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Been a pleasure. Always good catching up. UFC London, March 19th. Let's go.
Man, you got to love having John Gooden on, dude. It's good to see that guy with everything going on. We haven't seen him enough, but like we talked about, hopefully everything works out for March. We get to go to London, have a few pints, watch some amazing fights. But hey, we got to circle back. We weren't able to do our predictions, Michael, our favorite part of the show. So we're going to jump back to 270. We're going to jump back to the main event. Francis Ngannou, Cyril Gane. I'll start with you, Michael.
Man, I was hoping that you would go first, Paul. It depends
on the spot.
It depends on like which side of the bed I wake up on. It really differentiates who I pick.
What if you wake up on the floor?
I go back and forth on this so much because Cyril Gane is so cerebral. He's got a high fight IQ. He's so good with his lead hand. He's got a good jab. He's very methodical in his approach to how he really picks these guys apart. And then you got Francis, who's just complete raw horsepower. And you got Eric Nixick, who's, he's got the reins, and we all know how great of a coach he is. Today, I'm taking Francis Ngannou. I think that, I just think Francis gets it done. I think that, he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I don't think he'll fight with emotion, but I think that he'll find a way to put that right hand on his chin. And he's been working on new wrinkles to his game as well. You see him using a lot of wrestling in some of these pre-fight things. I saw him release some sparring footage from this camp, at Extreme Couture. So I just see Francis getting it done. I see Francis establishing his dominance as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
Michael, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think Cyril is definitely the more technical martial artist. There's no question about it. He's the better kickboxer. He might even be better just skill for skill everywhere. But I don't think it matters. When you're a heavyweight and you have the power that Francis has, I think that's going to be the difference. We could be wrong, and we'll be talking about it in a week. But I'm gonna join you there, and I'm picking Francis Ngannou to retain the belt and unify these belts because I just think he's built different. I don't care what sparring footage is out there. Again, we know that that's not how you read into things. There could be a million different things going on that day. I'm going Francis Ngannou. I agree.
Not to mention too, Paul, experience is a big thing in this sport. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't put a price tag on it. You can't emulate experience. There's nothing you can do in the training room that can take the place of actually being in the octagon and competing. And Francis has been in a lot of big fights. He's got a lot of big fight experience. And Cyril got the first taste of that in Houston, but that's a different fight. You're going in there against the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And I think experience is going to play a big role in this fight as well.
I agree. And speaking of experience and guys who have faced each other now going on for the third time, Brandon Moreno, Davison Figuereto, man, this one is the one that I've been going back and forth on a lot. And I really want to get it right. And that's what's driving me nuts here. But I'm going to go babyface assassin, man. I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno. I just think now he's got the confidence, and I do think we're going to see a more polished version of Figuereto, but I just think the way that Moreno looked in that second match and continuing that and just having such support behind him, I think he's going to get it done. I think it'll be a 5-round decision this time, though.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're just destined
But
to
I'm
fight
tough
each other.
on this
the
one.
way they match up against each other, I could watch them fight 10 times and I would not be upset about it. But I got to agree with you, Paul. As much as I'd like to go against you just for the sake of the podcast to just draw in some type of back and forth interaction, I agree with you. I just think that Brandon Moreno has the recipe. He doesn't have to go make drastic changes to his camp and relocate anywhere. He's got it figured out. He's been to the bottom. This is a guy that got cut from the UFC and had to fight his way back into the promotion. And you look at him now, he's a flyweight champion of the world. So you pair those two things together, just the fact that he's been through the depths, that he's been to the lowest lows of this sport and brought himself back up to where he's now at the top of the mountain, paired with the fact that he's got the winning recipe. I mean, he doesn't have to change anything with this camp. And I agree. I think Davison Figueredo is going to come in a better version of himself. I think training at Fight Ready with Henry Cejudo and his team, I do think it's going to benefit him a lot. But like I said, I just think that when you have the winning recipe and you don't have to change anything, that's the guy that I'm going to side with. He doesn't have to change anything. So like I said, you pair, the amount of adversity that Moreno's been through on top of the fact that he's got his training situation locked down. I think that you put those two things together, it's a winning recipe for him to go out and win this third fight.
Yeah. Good points there. And another fight that we want to talk about, I believe it's not completely official, but it looks like it's going to happen. A very fun fight between Ilia Topuria and Charles Jourdain. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, Michael, and you brought up a really good point that Ilia Topuria, a sick submission jiu-jitsu player, but really lately has fallen in love with his hands and has looked good there. Then you get a guy like Charles Jourdain in front of you who maybe doesn't have the credentials on the mat, but when you stand and trade with him, he's a maniac and he's fun. He's got great kicks. He switches stances. He's got powerful hands. He's been in some wars with fighters. If Ilia stands in front of him too long, he might be on the wrong end of that. What do you think about that matchup? It's a great fight.
Oh, I think it's a phenomenal fight. I was super high on Ilia Topuria, when he made his debut on Fight Island. And just like we talked about before we filmed this segment, this is a guy that he got to the UFC by just out grappling these guys. And progressively, as he's got in the UFC, if you didn't know who Ilia Topuria was before he got in the UFC, you would think that he's a pure striker. I mean, his body of work in the UFC has been great with his stand-up. And then he puts the two together in that fight against Ryan Hall. He used his grappling paired with his power that he showed on the feet to get that huge finish over Ryan Hall, which has been a tough puzzle for so many guys in the octagon. I mean, Ryan Hall has been a problem for a lot of guys. That's a tough puzzle to solve. And Topuria did it with his grappling and his power. So I'm excited to see this fight with Charles Jourdain. You know, for people that don't know, I'm big on betting. I love betting on fights when I'm not working these shows. And the bettors are all over Topuria as a huge favorite. And I think Charles Jourdain, he doesn't have just a puncher's chance in this fight. I think if Topuria tries to keep this fight on the feet, I could see Charles Jourdain I could see him getting his hand raised. So it depends on which Ilia Topuria shows up in terms of, is he going to grapple him or is he going to stand on the feet with him? I think that if he wants to win this fight and give him the best shot to do so, I think he's going to want to grapple Charles Jourdain. Sorry. But if he wants to stand and trade, can very much favor Air Jourdain. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that nickname, by the way. It's
yeah,
perfect.
Air Jourdain. But I'm telling you, I could even see Ilia Topuria winning by body shots. That dude goes to the body really well. Man, I'm telling you, go back, watch this. The dude rips to the body. When I was doing anyway, I'm calling it early. Ilia Topuria body shots.
You're calling it early? You know,
you owe me $500 if I pull that off, and I owe you nothing if I don't. How's that bet? All right, anyway, let's bring in our esteemed producer, Michael Ricci, with our 5 rounds. It's time, guys. 5 rounds. Ricci, come on in.
We're all right, I'm here. Line on this one.
Yeah.
All right, round 1. You guys obviously watched the fights this last weekend. Calvin Kattar, Giga Chikadze.
No.
I mean, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, the crazy thing about that fight is how almost a year to date was the Calvin Kattar Max Holloway fight. And we saw how that fight transpired. You know, to say it mildly, it was a one-sided pounding. Max Holloway was swinging the hammer, and then almost a year to date, it was the complete opposite. I mean, Calvin Kattar put on a masterclass way. He used his elbows and his boxing. You know, I had Kattar winning, but I thought it's because he was going to use his wrestling, and he barely went to it. He outstruck the elite striker. Phenomenal performance. I mean, Calvin Kattar's just he's always been an exciting guy to watch, and that fight was unreal. I was on my feet the whole time, jumping all over my house. It was completely insane.
Yeah, I was having fun. I don't get on the Twitterverse too much out there, but that was one fight I wanted to make sure that I was out tweeting these guys and giving them just clap emojis and everything you could, because it was just so back and forth. And it's what I love to see. Giga showed a lot of heart, pressing forward, still staying in the fight. But Kattar, the reason we fell in love with this guy as a fighter, it was fully on display on Saturday night with his boxing, the elbows. We've seen the elbows from him before. He's really starting to come into his own with that. He's not just a boxer. We talk a lot about his hands, but these elbows that this kid is throwing, phenomenal. We all know that's one of my favorite things to see a fighter be able to utilize and pull off. So to see Calvin Kattar do that was unbelievable. Great main event, great 5 rounds of action. I'll watch either one of those guys fight every time they go in.
You call them Hellbows, though, Paulie. You call them Hellbows, don't you? Isn't that your thing?
That was what Duke and the team had nicknamed them, some Hellbows.
Yeah, that was when you knocked out the now champion Charles Oliveira. Anyways,
I don't remember that fight ever happening, because now I'm gonna get all the flack for you bringing it up.
All right,
round two, Ricci.
Another announcement. I don't know if it's officially official, but and it's not for a belt, but Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, a lot of meat on the bone storyline wise there. Michael, your division, obviously. Let's go.
Oh man, super excited for this fight. You know, it's the third main event that we've had in the UFC, or no, 4th main event we've had in the UFC where there's been no title and it's a pay-per-view. First it was Anderson Silva, Nick Diaz. Then you had the 2 Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz fights. So it just shows that how big of a fight this is. The fact that it's going to main event a pay-per-view and there's no title on the line. You know, the bad blood is real with these guys. They were teammates for a really long time. And it's just as time has went on, things just boiled over. And now this friendship and this camaraderie they had once had, they were roommates at one point. These guys are out to get each other. I mean, they are out for blood. You know, we all know how Colby Covington builds these fights. He's had a lot of very choice things to say about Jorge Masvidal. And Jorge Masvidal, I've been in the octagon with him, and his stare alone, it's just piercing. You know, this is a guy that's Colby's a brave guy to be saying the things he's saying about Jorge, because Jorge Masvidal is the type of guy to where if he'll see you outside the octagon, he's going to kick your ass. So super excited for this fight. Super excited for it.
Yeah.
Everybody loves bad blood.
I can't wait to see the build up to this one. It's going to be, I mean, it's already been fun, and they're not even matched up until recently. And I'm curious to see the conclusion. Let's say these guys go out and go 5 rounds or whatever it's going to be. where are they at? I mean, these guys were boys. Like, this was not make-believe. These guys were really close, living together, like you talked about, Michael, cornering each other multiple times, going on vacations together, just being best friends for a long time. I mean, they had a little YouTube show for a while that I've gone back and watched. I forget what it was called, but it's hilarious to watch these guys just go about their daily life. Masvidal eating Oreos for breakfast and doing his whole thing. Colby being more dialed in, and just, the parallels between these two guys, and now bitter rivals that get to fight. So it's everything you want to sell a matchup.
Yeah, for sure. And the crazy thing is too, these guys, they were so close that Jorge actually went down to Oregon to Colby's hometown and like probably met his family and stuff like that. So it's like there was a deep friendship. There was there was a solid friendship. They were solid teammates, and just it's crazy to see how it's evolved. And I think the big question everybody has about this fight is Masvidal going to be able to stop the wrestling?
Yeah.
Because if what Colby says is true, that he could take him down at will in the training room, I don't see him going out there to stand. Not a lot of guys want to go stand with Jorge Masvidal. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Colby's approach to this fight's going to be.
The coolest thing would be is if this was all BS and they're just trying to take over the welterweight division and make as much money as humanly possible. I don't think it is. But how badass would that be if at the end they're like, yo, by the way, psych, we're really best friends, fooled you.
Man, I don't know how I feel about it. I'd be like slightly let down.
But bro, they pulled it off because they're talking, they're talking serious stuff. So anyway, we won't get into the conspiracy theories on this one. Ricci.
All right, round 3. Had a lot of people throw their name in the hat after Holloway was deemed out against Volkanovski and Korean Zombie getting the shot. You never got your reaction on this fight, on this announcement.
I'll let you lead the dance on this one, Paul.
Yeah, I think it really came down to that there wasn't too many real people who haven't come off a loss. The top contenders have already lost to the champion. Max Holloway's out. Obviously, oh my gosh, who just lost to Max?
Giga.
No,
Yair Rodriguez.
Yair just lost, right? So everybody there. So Korean Zombie, even though he hasn't been as active, makes the most sense. Obviously, Cejudo threw his name out there, but I love this fight. I just think the champion needs some new blood anyway. So the fact that the Holloway fight, even though I agree that Max was next in line, even though 2 in a row, very close, a lot of people don't like to see that third fight. This is interesting. The Korean Zombie's a tricky puzzle to figure out, but I don't know. I think Volkanovski gets this one done.
Yeah, a lot of people, I'm seeing some backlash about this fight being announced, but what people got to remember, for one, like you said, the landscape of the division, the Korean Zombie's just the guy. He's in the top 5. He's coming off a win, and Ortega already just fought him. Cater's not in any condition to jump in there.
No.
He just got done with a 5-round war with Giga Chikadze. So, Korean Zombie's the guy, and people got to remember this is a fan. Like, I'm surprised how many people are kind of fussing about this fight being made, because Korean Zombie's always been such a fan favorite fighter. And this is a guy that's already fought for the title against Jose Aldo. So why not put him in there again? I mean, you want to see, people need to go back. You need to forget about whatever's making their blood boil about this being the fight. And remember, this is the Korean Zombie that we've been a fan of for so long. One of the most fan favorite fighters. So I'm excited for it. He's a different puzzle for the champ. And I'm a sucker for Korean Zombie. I really am. I mean, right when I got off the Ultimate Fighter, Paul, I went to the Las Vegas fight shop and I beelined right over to the Korean Zombie they had like a little stand for the shirts, because I saw his walkout shirt in one of the fights when I was on top. I was like, I gotta have a Korean Zombie shirt. I'm a huge fan of the guy. So I'm excited to see him fight Volkanovski. I do see the champ getting his hand raised, but nonetheless, I'm always tuning in to watch the Korean Zombie.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Round 4. It's that time of year. New Year's resolutions.
Michael?
I have a few. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. My New Year's resolution is to just be a little more structured. Like I'm such a kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody that's hearing this. So my New Year's resolution is to just structure certain things in my life a lot better. It's so easy for me to structure training and things like that. But outside of that, it's like my New Year's resolution is to create more of a daily regiment that I'm going to stick to every day. Like I'm going to get up at a certain time every day. I'm going to do these certain things in the morning every day. Do things like, get up in the morning and stretch and foam roll, just create a better routine and some structure in my day-to-day life. Like I said, it's easy for me to structure training. That's not a problem, but it's like everything outside of that, I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So my goal for 2022 is more structure in my day-to-day routine.
Yeah. I no big ones. I didn't really sit out, and I wrote down kind of like a list of goals is kind of what I do. At this point in my life, I don't really have resolutions. There's no glaring things where I'm like, God, I got to stop eating McDonald's every day, So we're not at that point, but I want to do more probably with the family if I can this year. That would be a smart thing to do because I'm kind of the guy that gets so siphoned into my own schedule and training schedule and doing all that. I want to, a goal is to come in top 5 for one of these races. And, and also take care of my body a little more, Michael. That's something that 37, I'll be 38 in April. The hips are starting to really act up, things like that. So just be more on top of injuries and nagging injuries and things like that. And maybe not drink as much beer this year. That's probably another goal too.
Oh, I don't know about you. I'm not laying off the
I didn't say stop drinking it.
I agree with you though, and that's like I said, like when it comes to creating structure in my day-to-day routine, it really kind of revolves around that. Like I need to get up in the morning and foam roll and stretch and kind of create a regiment, hold myself accountable to doing more maintenance stuff. It's Paul, you and we're cut from the same cloth. It's easy for us to go grind ourselves in the dirt in the gym and push ourselves to the brink of death. Like that's just what we do. Yeah. But it's like when it comes to like stretching and maintenance stuff, I'm so nonchalant about it. Yeah. So it's like 2022 is the year of maintenance. Maintain the body.
That's good. That's good. What about you, Richie?
You got any
I don't want to talk. No one cares about my New Year's resolution.
We do.
Maybe your New Year's resolution is to have a little more confidence. Come on this show and tell us about yourself.
I'll tell you later. But I want to know what I want to know is both your teams are on vacation, playing a little golf. Super Bowl picks, early Super Bowl picks. You could change your mind later, but what are your early picks?
I'll go first. As everybody knows, I'm definitely a Seahawks fan. I'm a Washingtonian, so of course I'm going to support my Seahawks. But my Uncle Joe Corella has been the longtime sports psychologist of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I am enabled to have 2 teams. So I still have a dog in the fight. Taking Tampa Bay Buccaneers. TB12 is going to get ring number 8. Let's go Bucks.
Obviously, as we know, throughout my career, I spent a lot of time in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, the Eagles are out. Might as well go Green Bay Packers and push for them. I got a lot of friends out there in Milwaukee, so I'll be rooting with them. Well, not even rooting. I'll just pick them.
Fair enough.
All right. Listen, that's the end of our 5 rounds. I want to say a big thank you to John Gooden for joining us. Michael, it was great to see you. 2022, here we are, UFC Roundup. Guys, we're waiting for that other contract, UFC Roundup. Make it a big hit so that we can push for that second contract. And other than that, we're going to say peace out. I guess we'll see you next week, probably. Yeah. And we'll wrap up UFC 270.
We'll see you on the other side of 270.
And we'll look forward. And so guys, still though, keep the questions coming. If you got any interesting questions, hashtag UFC Roundup in the comment section. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram as well. And we'll switch it up from week to week, make it funny and then serious. This week, obviously, we had a lot of stuff to discuss. So please.
I want to get back on the sandwich kick. Remember?
Back to the
sandwiches. I'm not fighting until after my wedding. So
come on.
I want to get into the sandwich talk.
We can do desserts, favorite desserts. Guys, come on.
Something fun.
Anyway, peace out, guys.